The blood of the dragon has always been unique. The dragon is not the slave, he is the enslaver. He is the destroyer, and a power so calamitous that people of the Seven Kingdoms see them and their riders, the Targaryens, as being closer to gods. There's some truth to this statement, in that the Targaryens have the most unique features in the entire world that George R.R. Martin has created, and those features do make them seem godlike. But does that truly make them gods? And is the mark of being a god having white hair? In this video, we'll take a look at just why the Targaryens have white hair, and whether it has anything to do with their supposed divine status. Put on your spoiler caps for extra protection, because there will be a lot of those in this video. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Hair color, eye color, and genetics. Why members of the great houses look the same. Let's begin with a basic fact about appearances of nobility and people in general in the world of Ice and Fire. Members that belong to the same gene pool have a tendency to feature the same appearance traits over and over again, over the course of thousands of years. You can tell which family a person belongs to if you know what features they tend to manifest, because genetics are rather permanent in Martin's world. In the real world, when a couple has a baby, it isn't necessary that the child will look like either of its parents. This is because we generally can't guess which ancestor's genes will be dominant or recessive in a child, and so two parents with brown hair and brown eyes can have a blonde-haired child if they have blonde-haired people in their ancestry. However, in Westeros, members of a certain lineage have physical features that are specific to that lineage. The Starks are marked by their brown hair and gray eyes. The Tullys are marked by their ginger hair and piercing blue eyes. The Baratheons have blue eyes as well, but their hair is jet black. The Lannisters have golden hair and eyes of jade, and most famously, or infamously, the Targaryens have platinum blonde hair and purple eyes. All of these houses play an important role in the series, and most of their members have features that mark them as belonging to said house. The Targaryens happen to have the most unique coloring of them all, so they tend to stand out, because regular people only get that shade of platinum blonde through age. Being born blonde, brunette, or gender is rather natural, but only albinos have hair that matches the description of Targaryen hair. Yet they clearly aren't albinos, because their eyes are violet, save Bloodraven's, who is actually an albino. So there you have it. Mystery solved, right? Targaryens have platinum blonde hair, which most great houses cannot produce, and that sets them apart. So what happens when a proper Targaryen baby is born with features that differ from their race? What happens when Targaryens don't have white hair? Unlike actual genetics, appearance traits carry over across generations in A Song of Ice and Fire. All of the Targaryens' ancestors, in fact all Valyrians, were said to look the same, but the Valyrians also practiced incest for millennia, which explains why that was the case, and also means that their DNA was practically untouched before the Targaryens shifted to Westeros. Once that happened, they began intermarrying with other Westerosi houses, and in doing so, found that genetics was a treacherous field. While it doesn't work the conventional way for multiple generations of the same family, it does when two diverse gene pools are commingled. The biggest example of this comes from the first book. In the show, all the Stark children look like Northerners, save Sansa, who has the auburn hair of a Tully. But in the books, none of them, save Arya, look anything like their father. Only Arya and her bastard brother Jon have the Stark look, which means that in the rest of Catelyn's children, the Tully gene ran strong. The Baratheons have a gene pool so fertile that no matter where they marry, or who, their features will make themselves known in some way or another. In the show, Rhaenys has the platinum blonde hair of a Targaryen, but in the books, she had the black hair of a Baratheon. Her mother was Jocelyn Baratheon after all, and her combination of black hair and purple eyes made Rhaenys seem even more otherworldly than most Targaryens. Ned Stark used a boring old book on the lineages of each great house of Westeros to prove that Robert's children were Jaime's bastards, because every time a Baratheon married a Lannister, the former's features won out, every time. The reason Jaime and Cersei looked like model Lannisters was because their parents were cousins, and that revealed to Ned that Cersei's children were Jaime's bastards. This is why Jace is so worried about his parentage right now, because when Rhaenyra gave birth to Harwin Strong's children, all of them took after him. If they'd even looked a shade more sunburnt than they do, then perhaps she could have passed them off as Laenors more convincingly. But the treachery of genealogy is such in the Game of Thrones. Preserved amongst your own line, it proves legitimacy. Mingle it with another's, and without proof, your word is as good as ash in the wind. Jacaerys won't be the first Targaryen prince to have non-Targaryen features. A few generations after him, King Daeron II will take a Martell to wife, and his son and heir, Baelor Breakspear, will have none of the Targaryen look. King Maekar married Deanna Dane years before he ascended the throne, and his eldest son, Daeron the Drunken had the stony Dornishman features typical of those born in or around Starfall. But the difference between them and Jace is the fact that their parentage was never in question. His is. Rhaenyra goes through pretty much the exact same thing that is prophesied to happen to Cersei. Cersei had 3 children out of wedlock, and all of them are fated to die before her. While Rhaenyra has 2 kids from her second marriage, she wasn't faithful during her first, and the proof is in the pudding she and Harwin created together. And more than that, Targaryens without Targaryen features came to be disliked and mistrusted, probably because people remembered Jace's history. In the books, Baelor Breakspear is pretty much everything you can want from a crown prince, and yet he lives life like Sisyphus, always fighting an uphill battle. His Dornish look, however, made many lords resist his authority as the crown prince, heir to the throne and hand of the king. Daeron was a besotted man who could probably outdrink Ulf, so people shunned him for his habits. But if you were ambitious and diligent, he'd have probably been treated like Baelor. Moreover, their mothers were from the kingdom that brought death and ruin to not only the Stormlands and the Reach, but their own house as well. Therefore, Targaryens that don't look like Targaryens have a long history of being distrusted in Martin's series. And it all began with Rhaenyra's follies. However, this still doesn't answer the question. Does having white hair make them gods? In the book it doesn't, but in the show, it kind of does. How has House of the Dragon made Targaryen hair a cornerstone of their godly status? The only family whose genealogy is reflected by their appearance in the HBO verse is House Targaryen, and perhaps the Lannisters a little bit. Finding blonde actors is far easier than looking for actors with auburn hair and the build of Robb Stark, and dyeing Kit Harington's hair brown and giving him gray contact lenses would have been an objectively poor choice. Many great houses do not have their characteristic coloring adhered to strictly by the showrunners, and even Jason and Tyland don't look quite as Lannister as Cersei and Jaime and Tyrion did. The only race of men whose hair color is a mark of their divinity is House Targaryen, and their white hair is a huge part of that. Like we mentioned in the first segment, platinum blonde is an exceptionally rare hair color to be born with. That already sets them apart from other men, but lacking their characteristic purple eyes in the show, their hair becomes that much more important, because it's the only indicator of Targaryen blood, or rather Valyrian blood. In the show, Alan Velaryon regularly shaves his head because he knows that if anyone saw his hair, they'd know who his father was. Alan does it because he doesn't want to be treated different from others, but another Valyrian is about to do the same thing next year. In A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, Prince Aegon Targaryen will shave his head while traveling with Duncan the Tall, because his deep purple eyes make him stand out already, and platinum blonde hair would be a dead giveaway. Now that we've established that, let's also comment on why this perception of godhood has been carried over into the show. It all stems from the passage in Fire and Blood that describes why dragon seeds were tolerated, where regular bastards were not. When the Targaryens first arrived in the Seven Kingdoms, the inhabitants of the continent had never seen anyone like them. Dragonstone was populated with fisherfolk for the most part, so when they saw their regal new overlords with their exotic features and their dragons, they couldn't help but see them as gods. House Targaryen likely leaned into this perception and maintained it for the sake of propaganda, because they must have known that anyone with Dragonlord blood could bond with dragons. But because hair is the only way to differentiate them from the rest of the world, their white hair becomes a symbol of not only legitimacy, but also divinity. The dragons are gods, and the Targaryens ride them. That makes them demigods at the very least, if not the tamers of gods. There is, of course, a theory from the fandom that takes this perception further, and makes it literal after a fashion. It is said that in the Far East, before the Golden Empire of ET, came the Great Empire of the Dawn. This great empire was first ruled by the god on Earth, who was the son of the Lion of Night and the Maiden Maid of Light, the primary deities of the Far East. This demigod ruled his great empire for 10,000 years, before rejoining his ancestors in heaven. His descendants were the Gemstone Emperors, each named after a precious gemstone found in the world. His final descendant was supposed to be the Amethyst Empress, but she was cast down by her jealous brother the Bloodstone Emperor, who killed her and usurped her throne. This act triggered the Long Night, and Azor Ahai was born to end it. In the works of Septon Barth, he speculates that an ancient race from Asshai came to the Valyrian Peninsula and taught the Valyrians how to ride the dragons and perform blood magic, and the Dragon Lords rose to power following a period of relative calmness, as though during that time they were learning things. People tend to buy the Valyrian shepherd's origin story, but we don't. And when the World of Ice and Fire told us the story of the Great Empire of the Dawn, we instantly matched the Amethyst Empress to the eye color of Targaryens. In Martin's writing, Dany's eyes are often compared to amethysts. In A Clash of Kings, she had a vision of emperors that had the hair color of Valyrians, but eyes of varying shades of gemstones. And they all encouraged Daenerys to fly and wake the dragon. If these guys are the same as the emperors of the Great Empire, then the Amethyst Empress is most likely the ancestor of the Valyrians, considering how eye color works in this world. If that's true, then the Targaryens are truly descended from gods, and their hair color is proof of that in the HBO verse. This mad theory needs more confirmation, of course, but having dragons is the closest thing to it, we suppose. Marvelous verdict. So there you have it. Why Targaryens have white hair, why it matters, and whether it truly makes them gods. The truth is that no man can ever be a true god in Martin's world, at least not without making insane sacrifices. But the Targaryens are the closest things to it, and that's why they ride dragons and have dragon dreams. Their hairdo simply marks their blood, and if any man has the blood of the dragon, no matter their coloring, they will have the power of a god. Don't believe us? Just ask Jace. But that's enough from us. We want to know your thoughts. Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, do remember, history is written in fire and blood. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.